It required a combination of 5 precise sound frequencies together in a set to be able to fully restore the resonant frequency and function of any part of the human body and energy field. This was called the Secret of 5, and it was not released publicly for, I think, like 50 years of his work. It was just a secret of his work. This is like a very advanced level, but it's something that's also so fundamental. Everyone should be aware of this, where this stuff was incredibly hidden before, like that incredibly advanced internal alchemy. Until 30 years ago, you couldn't even access that stuff hardly. These invisible waves of sound structure all of matter. And so this is the field of cymatics. And so I've worked with people in the cymatics field now for decades. And I also worked with Mandara Cromwell, who's the person who is the leader of cymatherapy, how to apply the cymatic sound waves in complex sound codes, a method developed by Dr. Peter Guy Manners in Britain in the mid-1900s, but now moved up to a higher level of technology. They started out with like Chladni plates, in which you'd have like just like a metal plate that would have powder on it, and you draw like a violin bow across the side of it, and according to the note you created, it would immediately form up the amorphous mass of powder into a very specific geometric mandala. And now we can do it like Hans Jenny did. He would use pastes and gels and liquids, and you could see that whenever you get this invisible wave of sound, it will immediately structure the physical matter. It's the waves that actually construct the form of the human physical body, that give it its form. And so with the sonic waves, this can be taken very, very far, but it shows people visually, in a very immediate way, change the sound vibration in an invisible wave, and it will immediately change the physical structure of what's being impacted by the wave. It shows people visually how invisible waves actually create all form and all energy patterns. Then you've got the aspect where once they discovered what these different vibrational sounds do in creating these structures, as I mentioned, a British osteopath named Dr. Peter Guy Manners in the mid-1900s created a system at his clinic outside of London where he could apply complex sound codes. And one of the fascinating things about the cymatherapy sound codes is he found that his goal was to be able to restore the core resonant frequency in the organs of the body, connective tissues, energy field, everything. And so what he found is that using just one sound alone was not sufficient. 2 was not sufficient. 3 was not sufficient. 4 was not sufficient. It required a combination of 5 precise sound frequencies together in a set to be able to fully restore the resonant frequency and function of any part of the human body and energy field. This was called the Secret of 5, and it was not released publicly for, I think, like 50 years of his work. It was just a secret of his work. But the Secret of 5 is very important, bringing together those different frequencies into a sound complex code. And he also found that to get that full resonating ability in the body, it's not enough just to hear it. Those complex sound codes need to be driven directly into the tissue of the body through a transducer. But cymatics is the perfect illustration of how invisible waves structure all physical matter and are the foundation of all life and existence. And cymatherapy is the healing application of that in extremely advanced forms. One of the great lost secrets of all spiritual development, of all personal development, is the concept of structuring the subtle bodies. This was something I was really exposed to through the work of Dr. Samuel Sagan at the Clear Vision School in Sydney, Australia. And it really put me on a really good path back in the 90s for this. So the idea of this is that our energy bodies, our subtle energy, has a particular structure to it. Very advanced spiritual teachers will sometimes develop the capacity to perceive the subtle energy structures in the bodies of their students. Because all of our karmic history, everything we've done in the past, whether in this lifetime or earlier lifetimes, all of that collapses into specific structures in our energy field. That means that our energy field is geometrically structured. There's a sacred geometry to every person's energy field as a unique structure in the universe, because they're all structured slightly differently. There's commonalities between them all. We all have the 7 chakras and acupuncture points and all that. But which of those are really active in our field? Which of those are really sedated or dormant? Which of these are properly formed and which of these are distorted? Which of the links between the centers are operating or are not operating? This creates different sacred geometry patterns in the energy field. For someone who's very advanced in this as a spiritual teacher, they might even be able to see what spiritual traditions a person trained with earlier in this life or another life, because the practices you learn from any spiritual tradition invisibly structure the energy in your field. This is like a very advanced level, but it's something that's also so fundamental. Everyone should be aware of this. The only thing you take with you through the gate of death is the structure of your energy field. So that's the pearl of great price. You've structured your energy field into a particular geometric pattern through everything you've thought, everything you've felt, every action you've taken, thinking, feeling, and willing, like Steiner says. Of thought, speech, and action, like the Buddhists say. So all of that creates a force. If I have a detrimental thought and I keep reinforcing it, that'll start changing a pattern in my energy body. I have a highly beneficial internal emotional state. That starts structuring something in my energy body. Every single action we take, including thoughts and feelings, structures our energy field through repetition. And that is the most important thing that we need to be aware of. And it also, once you know that, it opens up into all these other areas. So, for example, when you are, as I mentioned before, training with a particular tradition, all of the practices of that tradition are meant to structure your energy body into a particular form that gives you particular siddhis, or particular powers, as they describe in the Himalayas. But you will develop different siddhis and different structures in your energy body based on what practices you choose to do. So the blessing and the curse of modern metaphysics, as I often talk about, is that the blessing is that we're exposed now to an incredible wealth of amazing information and practices from traditions where this stuff was incredibly hidden before, like that incredibly advanced internal alchemy practices coming from the Chinese Taoists. Until 30 years ago, you couldn't even access that stuff hardly. And now there's like almost so many deep parts of it are available to us. But that's the blessing. The curse is people don't have the structural ability to put the fragments coming from all these traditions into a workable form. That's why when they learn this, they have to understand how to structure their practices in such a way that the structures of the energy body actually become something that optimizes this incarnation, so you can take with you all of these new improvements, these new organs of spiritual perception in the subtle body. So I can connect to that, another one of the questions coming up, which naturally follows on this, which is just as I have an introductory course for the vibrational testing and healing, which is the personal wavelength course, where you learn what the French call medical radiesthesia, I have an introductory course for the spiritual science track on my website for the Vestica Institute, and it's a course called Essential Teachings and Practices of Spiritual Science. And in Essential Teachings and Practices, I cover a lot of things that are absolutely essential that aren't even being discussed anymore, that people don't even have on their radar, including this concept of structuring the energy field, about being able to develop both receptive and active forms of meditation. Both must be equally developed, whereas many schools will only develop one of the two. But a major part of it is that I teach what Steiner called the 6 basic exercises, and I call the 6 essential exercises. Now, we have to be aware different traditions will structure energy field in different ways. Some will really hyperstructure the fields around the head, some will structure it around the heart, some will structure it around the abdomen. But the issue around all of this that Steiner was aware of and the European Rosicrucians found a solution to is that our entire body of energy has to have an organizing center, like the point in the center of the circle. If you don't have an organizing center for any energy field, it becomes chaotic and it can become destructive. There must always be an organizing, balancing, harmonizing center. That's the whole point of biogeometry. So what Steiner actually described was a series of 6 exercises in which you observe the content of your thinking, your feeling, your willing, and then you start developing other capacities in your internal life. And so in the Essential Teachings and Practices course, I go into detail on each of the 6 practices, and then I expand it beyond what Steiner talked about, because Steiner gave out somewhat of the receptive aspect of the observation of these faculties inside of us, but you need to add to it the active side. So I describe both sides of it as the 6 essential exercises. So what Steiner made clear is that although it might appear that these are just kind of general exercises with your thinking and your feeling and your willing, that what it actually does is each of the 6 exercises is developing one of the 12 lotus petals of the 12-petal lotus of the human heart. And so 6 of them, he said, were already developed by us in previous ages, previous lifetimes. But we have 6 that must be developed in our current time. If we can develop those 6 other lotus petals on the 12-petal lotus of the heart, that will allow the entire heart to become active as an organizing center for the entire body of energy. And so the six essential exercises, the hidden part of it is that it's structuring your energy field to activate the heart center and create an organizing center for all of the flows. Now, what the assemblage point is a teaching that was popularized by Carlos Castaneda, apparently from his teachers, but also appears in some other traditions. So there are some teachers from the Native American tradition, Harley Swift Deer. There's some other people that teach this sort of thing. But the basic idea of it is it's talking about the straight line energy axis that the human heart, we know it's a chakra, and some people aren't aware that that chakra is actually front and back. There's a front chakra and a back chakra. And it comes together at a nodal point in the center, where the chakra in the center of the body is actually on that string of the central axis from the crown to the perineum we talked about before. That central axis in the center of the body is the key that holds together all of the chakras on a front to back axis. And so what the assemblage point is a line of energy that runs through the heart, front and back. This work was developed further by John Whale in Britain, who wrote a couple of books about this, like The Catalyst of Power. And so what he's doing is he's looking at the assemblage point that needs to be properly balanced. This is a geometric mystery. He doesn't know about it, and he doesn't talk about the central axis that's connected to this, but he does know about the line going through the heart. But these two have to be at a 90-degree angle as part of a greater divine geometry that our energy bodies are based on. So he shows the way, very accurately, I think, that if your energy axis running through the front heart and the back heart as a line of energy, a horizontal axis of energy in your energy body, if it starts to move up this way, it can become manic states and a whole bunch of other variations thereby based on where it's being deflected to. I think that's super important work. It helps to show the power of where these energies in the structure of the human energy field that we've been talking about, how powerful they are in affecting our thoughts and our feelings and our ability to even incarnate fully. But the thing about it is that we should be aware that they're focusing on the assemblage point that's running as a horizontal axis of energy through the front back heart chakra. And that's very important because, like Steiner talked about, the heart chakra is the balancing center. And so that's like a key place that has to be activated first to organize everything else in your energy field. But what they don't tend to talk about is that that same assemblage point axis is present on all the chakras. So you could actually look at the crown perineum axis as an assemblage point, but one that's vertical, and the most important one running through the center of your body. So there's another one at the third eye center, there's another one at the throat, there's another one at the solar plexus. There's a series of these, and if any of those get displaced, and usually they're all over the place, then just like at the heart, it can create manic or depressive states, etc., the way John Whale's books like Catalyst of Power describe. If these other energy axes at the other chakras are off, it'll create other types of distortions and problems in those fields as well. Yeah, one other quick point with that is that when I constructed the Gaia TV series on sacred geometry, I was looking at what are some of the most important patterns people should know because they exist all over the place in the human energy field and in the cosmos, and they all have certain functions. So in the one of the first episodes, I give a practice based on the cubical cross, because what is the physical world based on? It's based on a 3-axis cross. Every part of it is at 90 degrees to the other. So if you hold your fingers like this, like in electrical engineering, it shows you the 3 axes of space. And so it's front, back, side to side, top down. That becomes the framework for constructing a physical body in a 3-dimensional world. And I teach people a hidden method for activating the front back along the third eye center, the side to side, going through the same central point, and then the top down from the central axis. That creates a 3-axis cross that goes through the cave of Brahma, the third ventricle of the brain, and it stabilizes the activity or the activation of the fields in the head. And that's why I felt it was important to teach people then in detail the 6 essential exercises from Steiner to activate the heart as the whole organizing center in the Essential Teachings and Practices of Spiritual Science online course.